You're tuned in and locked on. Gay News Radio with Brandon Carmody. Only on the GNR Radio Network.
You're listening to Gay News Radio. I'm Brandon Carmody. Our guest today is Suzanne DeWitt Hall, the author of RUMPLEPIMPLE, HuffPost blogger, and Compassionate Human Being. Suzanne, always great to have you. Welcome back to GNR.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here on this difficult week.
So much has happened. I'm giving up the standard interview format, and we're going to go free form because I think it's fair to say, given the events in Orlando, that all of our lives have changed. The parameters, the rules of the game, so to speak, have changed, and I think that we're all just trying to find our place right now. So I'd like to start there. Will you tell us, where are you, Suzanne DeWitt Hall, where are you at today?
I wrote a HuffPost piece. I mostly drafted it yesterday, and I finished it this morning. And doing that, because I'm a writer, that's my outlet for processing some things. It was interesting that I had my wife read it before I submitted, and I think normally I have more of either a call to action or some kind of summary conclusion or something that kind of pulls things together. But in this case, it was more of a piece of mourning. I think that there's no solution offered. There's no call to action. It just this ugly situation just is, and I don't know what we can do about it. My post it's titled Please Stop. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely the title was Please Stop Killing Us. I saw it, and that is so relevant to, obviously, we've had several guests on recently that have reminded us at the high numbers of, transgender murders, and we do see different things throughout the year, but just to put Orlando in its perspective, to make sure that we put it in its proper context, both the FBI, the President of the United States, the media is calling this the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. So an outright violent assault on the LGBT community is now in that unfortunate legacy with Sandy Hook and Fort Hood and everything else. So it's a game changer.
It is. It's been interesting to watch conservative, socially conservative, politically conservative, and Christian conservatives trying to make it out to not be an LGBT issue and keep trying to sort of correct the conversation and say that it was, it's not hate crime, it's an act of terrorism. Well, it can be both. I mean, clearly it's terrorism to kill lots of people and as a result have our citizens operating in fear. I mean, clearly that's terrorism, but it can also be an action of a targeted hate. It's not like it's one or the other. Unfortunately, this is both. So it's an odd thing to see people who are not typically supportive of LGBT rights trying to process and deal with this.
Now, as we all look at our computer screens and our smartphones and the TV coverage, we've seen in recent days that vigils have been held around the country, around the world. One of our GNR correspondents sent us a photo from a vigil that was held in Paris, France yesterday. Portland, Oregon here has had them, Knoxville, Tennessee, just everywhere you can think of, and monuments are lighting up with the rainbow colors like we're back on that historic day of the Supreme Court decision from June of 2015. So just a thought or a question I have for you, Suzanne. The LGBT community as a greater group has had the capacity to find healing and to come together and to rally around when events bring us together. Do you think this is that moment where we can come together when you see these vigils, hundreds of people, thousands of people, entire town squares taken over for a vigil for Orlando? Is this our coming together moment?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have real mixed feelings. I think I'm probably not the only one. I think, vigils, the focus seems to be two-sided. They're often for prayer. They can be religiously based prayer vigils, and they are also just as a sign of solidarity and support. When it comes to things, tragedies, just massive in scale and just significant, I think, in cultural significance and historic kind of significance. I can see some people are saying, well, what good is a vigil? What does it really mean? Does it just give people something to do so that the next day they can go back into their lives and pretend it didn't happen? So I think I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I think prayer is always good, and I think that these signs of support have got to be encouraging to a lot of people. But at the same time, if my gaze is a little bit further out, I think, on what next. What do we do?
Yeah.
That's the puzzling thing. Is what do we possibly do?
Right, and so many people that we're talking to are just, some of them are barely able to hang on with words. Did you see, it's just going around Twitter today, a clip from Anderson Cooper when the names first started coming out last night, and they had to cut away to a card because he could just barely hold it together on air. And we're taking calls like that. We're having guests and people calling into GNR that are barely able to hold it together for an interview. And I'm doing my very best to moderate and to keep it cool and to get through this, from the coverage standpoint, but this is extremely emotional. This is the most emotional event that I've seen since the Supreme Court decision, but unfortunately this one is not a positive event, So emotions are running high.
It's like that pendulum swing. And I'm almost surprised that something of this magnitude hasn't happened before. As I think back now on the decades since Harvey Milk, and I'm thinking it's almost surprising that a largish group of people hasn't been targeted before. I mean, thank God. But in looking back now, and given the degree of hate and condemnation, it's almost surprising that it hasn't happened. And it makes me wonder why now. Has something been shifting? Is it because the gay marriage passed? Did some trigger kind of switch?
And the difficult question, and just to clarify for our listeners, we're going to stand in solidarity with the decision that CNN and Anderson Cooper made. We're not going to name the shooter. We're not going to give him another moment of recognition for such a heinous act. We will talk about the victims, so we'll just simply refer to him as the shooter. As we learn more, and the father of the shooter has been on television, and the ex-wife, more and more details are coming out. Like, it looks like he was a regular at the Pulse Club. He was recognized from, between 2 and 3 years of regular visits. He was known by the bouncers. His ex-wife has now said to foreign press that she suspected an attack. And so there's all of these lingering questions about, when we've seen in the past before where someone has been on a watch list, have been interviewed by the FBI, family members have flagged them, and then they slip through the cracks. Everyone wants to start pointing fingers. But the thing that I really have my suspicions about right now is that the ex-wife specifically says she suspected some type of attack or terrorist strike. I'm wondering if there could be a possible criminal indictment or what will happen for her silence.
I've been seeing a lot of that outrage, coming across my screen too, and it seems like a logical question. Where is the line between being an accessory? And I also don't know, though, culturally, I'm hugely ignorant, and I'm hugely ignorant about some Muslim cultures, and obviously about this family in particular and how traditional they would be. But given that he has been accused by a previous wife of domestic abuse, sometimes people trapped in that, typically women, but people trapped in that feel like they can't do anything. That doesn't excuse it, but it plays a part into, I would think, her culpability, I guess. It becomes complex. It certainly becomes complex. Because, of course, you would think, why wouldn't you speak up if you see him doing these preparations? But people in these domestic abuse situations, you can look at and it doesn't seem to make sense, but there are people who feel like they have no power. So it's going to be very interesting to watch how that unfolds, and heartbreaking there too.
Yeah. Yeah, and my understanding based on the current coverage is that they had a very limited marriage that ended somewhere between 2009 and 2010, less than a 6-month marriage because she suspected gay tendencies. So that just puts a horrible spin on the whole situation. If we're, in regards to the shooter, looking at any type of a repressed gay acting out some type of homicidal tendencies based on whatever inner turmoil or emotions that individual was going through, combined with, from what we now understand, a pledged allegiance to ISIS, which was on a recorded 911 phone call. So, unfortunately, they cannot question the shooter. They are going to have to go off of electronic records, the records of those that knew and witnessed him up until that point, and try to piece together these motives and the theory without his direct involvement. I want to transition here real quick. So in your piece, Please Stop Killing Us, Please, I want to ask you about Jamie. Will you tell us a little bit about Jamie and what's Jamie's story, and why did you reference Jamie in the HuffPost blog today?
Sure. Well, I recently moved from Massachusetts to Missouri, and so I'm connecting in with people in the writing community in this region and in the gay and lesbian support kind of communities. When I wrote a few weeks ago, I wrote a satirical piece for HuffPost called Jesus the First Transgender Man. And we did some sharing of that piece with some of the St. Louis support groups on Facebook. And Boom magazine is one of them. The piece went viral, relatively viral, and had thousands and thousands of comments. It got lambasted in various places around the internet, from Christian conservative news outlets and YouTubers with hundreds of thousands of followers. And so there's all this commentary from these people that ranged from personal attacks about me as a person to downright death threats and threats of blowing the HuffPost offices up like Charlie Hebdo, things like that. So in the process of all that unfolding, I met this trans woman. Her name is Jamie Heilman, and she is the board president of an organization that tries to pull together various support groups for trans people in the region. So it's called an umbrella organization. So in the course of talking with her, I discovered, she let me know that she's been getting hundreds of pieces of hate mail and death threats, and she's been compiling them because she figures if she's murdered, then she'll want to have a record for the FBI to use when doing their investigation. So, before this happened this week, I've already been planning to write a piece about these trans individuals who are targeted. I've got another friend, Heath Adam Ackley, who was a professor of theology and maybe of divinity, I'm not sure, I can't remember. He is an intersex individual who, within the last couple of years, has been transitioning from female to male. And he not only lost his job because of it, he's received death threats. I think even his children have received death threats. So, this phenomenon of people being threatened, their lives threatened has been something that has been slapping me in the face for the